A woman accused of shooting at a car on a busy Hillsborough County road was wheeled into court this morning. 21-year-old Aiden Richards is facing 2 counts of attempted murder.
It was supposed to be just another Monday afternoon in Brandon, Florida. Warm weather, traffic crawling along Brandon Boulevard, and drivers just trying to get home. But for 3 people that day, what started as a routine drive turned into a moment of sheer terror. At approximately 3:42 p.m. Mino's Hillsborough County emergency dispatchers began receiving frantic 911 calls. "There's gunfire, someone shooting in the middle of the road," one caller said. Another reported seeing a young woman collapse behind the wheel of a white sedan, blood on her shirt, and a shattered driver's side window. The woman was later identified as Aiden Richards, 21 years old, a local college student and part-time server at a nearby restaurant. She had just left a plaza on Lakewood Drive when a road rage altercation erupted between her and another vehicle, a dark gray SUV, occupied by a couple in their late 20s. According to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, it all began with a lane change. One vehicle swerved too close, middle fingers were exchanged, horns blared. Then, someone threw a cup of water onto Richard's vehicle during a red light confrontation. Witnesses say she screamed out of her window, "You're gonna regret that!" What happened next took less than 10 seconds, but it changed 3 lives forever. Aiden reportedly reached into her center console and pulled out a 9mm handgun. She leaned slightly out of the window and fired multiple rounds at the SUV. Dashcam footage from a nearby delivery truck captured the flashes, sharp, sudden, unmistakable. The video also recorded screams, tires screeching, and another series of gunshots as the male driver of the SUV returned fire, believing his girlfriend was being targeted. The intersection turned into a battlefield. Drivers ducked. One car swerved onto the sidewalk. A bystander filming on their phone dropped it as bullets flew past. At least 8 shots were exchanged in total. By the time deputies arrived, Aiden Richards was slumped over in her vehicle, bleeding from a gunshot wound to the upper arm. Miraculously, no one else was hit. The couple in the SUV sped off briefly, then pulled into a nearby parking lot to wait for deputies. They were shaken, but unharmed. Dashcam footage and eyewitness statements were critical in piecing together what happened. Richards was transported to Tampa General Hospital in stable condition and placed under guard by the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff spokesperson, Sheet Valerie Nunn, was blunt. "What we saw today was reckless and completely avoidable. It's road rage, escalated into gun violence in broad daylight, on a public road." Investigators recovered both firearms and collected shell casings scattered across the intersection. Surveillance cameras from nearby businesses confirmed much of the dashcam footage. Richards, according to detectives, never attempted to flee. She simply slumped behind the wheel, dazed and silent, as officers pulled her out of the car and applied a tourniquet. Charges came fast, and they were serious. 2 counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and unlawful discharge of a firearm from a vehicle. The incident sent a wave of concern through the Tampa Bay area. Parents worried about picking up their kids from school. Residents shared footage online with disbelief. Many asked the same question: how does a traffic disagreement turn into a shootout? That's when one of Florida's most well-known lawmen, Sheriff Grady Judd, decided to step in, and, as always, he didn't hold back. If there was any doubt about how fast a road rage incident could spiral out of control, the dashcam footage from a nearby delivery truck erased it. The 47-second video, now viral, shows the scene in agonizing clarity. Aiden Richards' white Nissan Altima is stopped at a red light on Brandon Boulevard, idling in the left lane. Next to her, in the middle lane, a gray Dodge Journey holds a young couple, names withheld, but later identified as cooperative witnesses. The footage begins with minor commotion, drivers gesturing, windows down, the muffled audio capturing a shouted insult. Then, someone leans slightly out of the SUV's window and tosses a plastic cup of water onto Richard's windshield. What seemed like a childish outburst would soon ignite something deadly. Richard snaps. Without hesitation, She reaches down, disappears from the camera's view for less than a second, and then a flash. A single gunshot rings out. Then another. And another. The driver of the SUV ducks. His girlfriend screams and reaches for her door. Richards leans out of her driver's side window and fires again, at least 5 shots in total, according to the sheriff's office ballistics report. What happens next nearly turns a busy Florida intersection into a tragedy. The SUV's driver pulls his own handgun from the glove compartment, legally registered. Deputies later confirmed, and fires 3 times in return, striking Richards once in the shoulder. One bullet tears through her side window and exits through the passenger side rear door. In the chaos, a nearby Honda Civic veers onto the sidewalk to avoid being caught in the line of fire. A woman in a parked minivan ducks with her child as a bullet ricochets off the curb. Glass sprays into the air, shimmering against the asphalt before falling like ash. Miraculously, no innocent bystanders were hit, but the psychological impact was immediate. "I thought it was a terrorist attack," said one witness, a 39-year-old contractor waiting at the intersection. People were hitting the floor of their cars. You don't expect to see that in broad daylight, not here. Police units from Hillsborough County arrived within minutes. Richards was still seated, her hand on her lap, blood soaking into the center console. Officers pulled her from the vehicle, applied pressure to the wound, and transported her to Tampa General Hospital in stable condition. She never said a word. The couple from the SUV remained on scene in a nearby strip mall parking lot. They cooperated fully, showed their firearm registration, and provided cell phone footage of the lead-up to the incident. The case quickly became headline news in Florida. Local stations ran segments on the growing dangers of armed road rage. Community forums lit up with debates. Did Richards act out of fear or malice? Was the SUV driver justified in firing back? Should either have had a weapon in the first place? But one detail made the public particularly uneasy. Richards had no prior criminal record, no history of violence, no known mental health concerns. She wasn't part of a gang. She was a waitress and college student, described by coworkers as quiet and responsible. "It was like she just snapped," one friend said. Snap or not, the law was clear. Prosecutors moved fast with charges. The state attorney's office argued that throwing water on a car does not justify attempted murder. Surveillance, dashcam, and eyewitness reports all confirmed that Richards was the first to fire and that she fired multiple times. But in court, her defense would argue otherwise, that she believed she was under attack, that she panicked, that she never intended to hit anyone. Still, the public wanted accountability, and within 24 hours, Sheriff Grady Judd gave them exactly that. "Let me be perfectly clear," Judd told reporters. "You opened fire on civilians because your ego got bruised in traffic? That's not self-defense. That's reckless, violent, and criminal, and it's not going to fly in Florida, not on my watch." The battle was no longer just in court, it was playing out on the streets, in the media, and in the eyes of a state growing tired of senseless violence. 2 days after the shootout on Brandon Boulevard, Aiden Richards entered the Hillsborough County Courthouse in a wheelchair, her arm still bandaged from the gunshot wound she received. She wore a standard orange jumpsuit, her face pale, eyes lowered, as the courtroom buzzed with media, deputies, and local residents hungry for answers and justice. The charges were clear: 2 counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, improper exhibition of a firearm, and discharge of a firearm from a vehicle. Her defense attorney requested bail. The prosecution firmly objected. What unfolded next was more than just a procedural hearing. It was a glimpse into a larger societal conversation. When does fear become justification? And when is it simply violence with a different name? The prosecutor didn't hesitate. "Your Honor, this defendant pulled a loaded firearm and fired at 2 unarmed people in the middle of a public intersection. She endangered children, families, and innocent bystanders. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, a dangerous one." The courtroom fell quiet. He then played a 20-second clip from the dashcam video, showing the moment Richards raised her gun and fired, The screen shook with recoil. Her face was twisted, not in fear, but what prosecutors described as rage and intent. "We're asking for no bond," the prosecutor said, "because if this woman is released, we believe she poses a serious threat to the public." Then it was the defense's turn. Richard's attorney argued that she was the one who had been provoked, that the water thrown on her car wasn't just childish, it felt like an attack, that she acted in panic, not premeditation, that she had no history of violence, no criminal record, and was a college student with a part-time job and stable residence. This was an overreaction, yes, but it was not calculated murder, the attorney insisted. She believed she was in danger. That's the core of her response. But prosecutors pushed back hard. They presented transcripts of Richard's social media messages from earlier that week, including a now-deleted Instagram story where she posted a photo of a pink handgun with the caption, "Try me. I'm done playing with people out here." That detail changed the tone of the hearing. The judge, after reviewing the dashcam video, social media evidence, and both arguments, ruled no bond at least until a full psychiatric evaluation could be completed and the charges formally reviewed by a grand jury. News spread quickly. Outside the courthouse, reactions were split. Some community members called the ruling just. Others, including a handful of young women who knew Richards personally, held signs reading, "She's not a monster, she was scared." But the public mood shifted definitively after a press conference held later that day when Sheriff Grady Judd addressed reporters from the Polk County Sheriff's Office. Standing behind the podium, arms crossed, Judd didn't mince words. "This isn't about fear. This isn't about defense. This is about ego and a gun. You don't get to open fire in traffic because someone splashed water on your window. You don't get to endanger a dozen lives because you got embarrassed." He paused, then delivered the line that would dominate headlines for the rest of the week. "You shoot at innocent people on a Florida road, you don't get bond, you get justice." The clip spread across the state like wildfire. Commentators praised Judd's clarity and backbone. Critics said it oversimplified a potentially complex mental health situation. But, no matter the opinion, everyone was talking. And Richards, now behind bars, was no longer just another defendant. She had become a symbol of fear, of overreaction, of the very fine line between self-defense and attempted murder. With her trial approaching and the public watching closely, one thing was certain: this case wasn't over, it was just getting started. The press conference wasn't scheduled, but when Grady Judd speaks, the media shows up, and so does the public. On the steps of the Polk County Sheriff's Office, with American and Florida flags fluttering behind him, Sheriff Judd delivered a blistering statement that quickly became the most talked-about reaction to the Brandon Boulevard shooting. He opened with a moment of silence for what could have been a mass casualty event. "We were lucky. That's the only reason nobody died. But luck is not law, and you don't get to gamble with other people's lives just because you got mad in traffic." Standing firm and flanked by deputies, Judd didn't refer to Aiden Richards as a suspect. He called her a shooter. "Let's call it what it was. This young woman fired a weapon not once, but multiple times on a public road, surrounded by cars, children, and innocent people. That's not fear. That's not confusion. That's not an accident. That's a conscious decision to pull a trigger when you should have pulled away." His tone hardened as he addressed the growing trend of armed road rage in the state. "It seems like every week now someone pulls a gun because they got cut off or someone honked at them. Let me be perfectly clear. That is not self-defense. That is not protected behavior under Florida law. That is attempted murder, and we will treat it that way every single time." He paused, then looked straight into the cameras. "You shoot at people over water being thrown on your windshield? You don't get bond. You get a jail cell. And if the law allows, you stay there until a jury decides your future." The line, "No bond for a shooter who endangered innocence," was clipped, subtitled, and broadcast across every major news outlet in the state within hours. Social media erupted with reactions. Some praised Judd as a voice of reason and order in a country grappling with emotional instability and gun violence. Others criticized the lack of nuance, pointing to Richard's age and the possibility of untreated anxiety or trauma. But for Judd, the stakes were too high to split hairs. Mental health is real, but so is responsibility. If someone's not mentally fit to carry a weapon, they're not mentally fit to fire one on a public street. That's not an excuse, that's exactly why we have laws. He ended the conference with a message not just for Florida, but for the country. The Second Amendment gives you the right to bear arms. It does not give you the right to become a danger to the public. You want to carry? Then carry responsibility with it. Because if you pull a weapon on a road in my state and you fire it, I will personally make sure you don't walk free while a community lives in fear. By nightfall, Aiden Richards' case had become national news. Talk shows debated whether her actions were criminal or panicked. Radio hosts replayed Judd's speech in full. Parents in Brandon told reporters they didn't feel safe letting their teens drive alone. And somewhere, in a jail cell, Aiden Richards sat in silence, now part of a story far bigger than herself. A story that Sheriff Grady Judd had made crystal clear. Florida has no tolerance for chaos, and justice will come, armed with the truth.